This is the new Audi Q2, and I say new, but although it's just been facelifted, you might struggle to tell the difference between this and the original car that was first launched back in 2016. So in this video, we're going to run you through all of the updates, not just the ones on the outside, but those on the inside and under the bonnet as well. And I'll also be telling you if the Q2 is still a great buy, the best way to spec one, and which other small SUVs you might want to be looking at as well. But before we get started, make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you aren't already, and remember to check out the latest deals over at whatcar.com if you want to buy any new car. It's very easy and you could save yourself a lot of money. Now, whether you like the looks or not, you've got to say that by Audi standards, the design of the Q2 is a little bit risque. So you've got this chamfered shoulder line here, and these rear pillars, or blades as Audi calls them, they're available in this dark grey, but also in silver or gloss black, depending on the trim level you go for. Starting around at the back, for the facelift, there's a redesigned rear bumper. This diffuser down here used to be rather more subtle, it's now bigger. And there are these polygons here that house the reflector lenses. There are some new alloy wheel designs as well. These particular wheels are only available S-line trim in the UK. This actual car is an early build Frankenstein model because it's effectively a sport, but it has some extras that you can't actually get on sport trim in this country. And if you come around to the front, you may notice that the grille is positioned slightly lower down. That's to make the whole car look wider, and there are more polygons. They're designed to look like air intakes, but they are in fact fake. If you go for an S-line model, you will get the slightly sporty looking front end, but all versions of the Q2 now come with LED headlights as standard. Now, a few years ago, someone at Audi decided that proper buttons are evil, and as many controls as possible should either be put into a touchscreen or made touch sensitive. And that's exactly what happened with newly launched models since, like the A6 and the e-tron, but also recently facelifted cars to a certain extent, like the A4 and the Q5. And it's great when it comes to showing cars off on online brochures or in showrooms, because the design is really clean and minimalist, there are lots of bright lights, and it all looks nice and modern. But it's very bad when it comes to usability. So thank you, Audi, for fundamentally leaving the Q2's interior alone. I'm not really sure if that's an acknowledgement that things needed to change, or whether it's just a more cost-effective solution before an all-new Q2 arrives in a couple of years. But the fact that Audi's newly launched e-tron GT sports car has more proper buttons inside is a good sign. What does that mean in practice? Well, it means the infotainment system is controlled by using this dial down here and these shortcut buttons. And you just twist it to move around the screen, and you press it down when you found what you want. And you do have to take your eyes off the road every so often to just check what you're doing, but it is a lot less distracting than trying to reach over here and find an icon while you're driving. These shortcut keys are really useful as well, because once you've learned what they do, you can just use them to flick from Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which all Q2s get as standard, to radio stations without even taking your eyes off the road at all. The heater controls as well, they are very easy to use, and listen to that lovely clicking sound, reminds me of an expensive watch or something. It is worth noting though that automatic climate control, which this car has, costs extra on all trim levels apart from range topping Vorsprung. And although you do get manual air conditioning as standard, the controls for it look rather cheaper than these here. Great driving position. Unlike some small SUVs like the Skoda Kamiq, for example, you do actually feel as though you're sitting a little bit further from the road than you do in a regular hatchback. And all versions of the facelifted Q2 get powered lumbar adjustment as standard, so that's great. These seats, in general, they're very comfortable as well, although it is worth noting that if you go for entry-level Technic trim, you do get quite a bit less side support than you get on these seats. What else is new for this facelift? Well, you've got a new gear knob. That's effectively been borrowed straight from the latest A3. And all versions of the Q2 now come with virtual cockpit digital instrument dials as standard. That's great, because you used to have to pay extra for that on most trim levels. Another improvement, albeit a minor one, is to interior quality. Now, the Q2 always had a classier interior than most of its direct rivals, like the Ford Puma, the Renault Captur, and particularly the Volkswagen T-Roc, actually. And it was only the Mini Countryman that came close. But compared with some other Audi models, you could see signs of cost cutting. So this slab of plastic up here used to be quite scratchy and unappealing. It's finished much better now. And you've still got a really, really nice interior otherwise. So you've got nice squidgy plastics up here on the dashboard, on the tops of the doors, not only in the front but in the back as well, and that's very, very unusual for this class. In fact, believe it or not, this car feels quite a bit classier inside than the larger and more expensive Q3. It might be pretty small by SUV standards, but actually there is enough space in the back here for someone of my height, just over 6 foot, and this seat here is set up for my driving position as well, so that is not bad at all. Fitting 3 adults in the back is a bit more of a challenge because of this big hump here down on the floor, and there aren't any clever seating tricks like sliding reclining rear seats that you get in a Mini Countryman, for example, but all versions do come with ISOFIX mounts not only on the outer rear seats but on the front passenger seat as well. All models now get an electric tailgate as standard, and the boot that it opens to reveal is a pretty good size actually, slightly bigger than what you'll find in an A3 hatchback. You do lose a bit of space if you go for a Quattro 4-wheel drive model or you go for a spare wheel, which this car has. But if you don't do either of those things, then this floor becomes height adjustable. You can put it down into its lowest setting to maximize boot space, or you can put it up here, and that means there's barely any drop down from the entrance onto the boot floor. And it also means that when you fold down the rear seats, then you don't get a step in the floor of the extended low bay. Now, there are currently 4 engines to choose from in the regular Q2. There's the entry-level 30 TFSI, and that isn't, as someone asked me the other day, a 3 litre. It is in fact a 1 litre with 109 brake horsepower. So actually a little bit less power than you got from the same engine in the pre-facelifted car. Next up, there's the 35 TFSI. That's a 1.5 petrol with 148 brake horsepower, and there are a couple of diesels as well. The 30 TDI, that has 114 brake, and the 35 TDI, 148 brake horsepower. They're both 2 litres. There is a 300 odd brake horsepower hot SQ2 as well that uses the same basic engine, gearbox and 4-wheel drive system as the T-Roc R. But although it's very fast, it's not actually that much fun to drive. So if you are looking for a small SUV that's quick but will really put a smile on your face, do yourself a favour and take a look at the Ford Puma ST, and you can read about that by clicking up there at the top of the screen. This car is the 35 TFSI, and performance is really good actually. It pulls well from low revs, the power delivery is really smooth, and other than the fact it does lurch a little bit at really low speeds, it also works well with this optional 7-speed dual clutch automatic gearbox called an S-Tronic. Although you can save yourself about £1,500 by going for the manual, so that is worth bearing in mind. And certainly by small SUV standards, it handles really well. There isn't too much body lean through corners, there's plenty of grip, and you even get a good sense of connection with the front wheels from the steering. In short, it is much, much better to drive than cars like the Peugeot 2008 and the Mini Countryman, and it's only really the Ford Puma that's in the same league in this class. You are better off avoiding 19-inch alloys if comfort is a priority. This car has 18-inch wheels that are optional on sport trim and standard on S-Line. But the good news is that you don't get sport suspension as standard if you go for S-Line trim, which is a good thing. There is a little bit more road noise than you get in cars like the Peugeot 2008, but overall, the Q2 is a pretty quiet cruiser. But here is our take on how to spec the perfect Q2. Go for the 35 TFSI that we've got here. The entry-level 1 litre petrol 30 TFSI isn't bad at all, but let's face it, you're not buying a Q2 to save money, so it is worth spending the extra £1,800 or so for a bit more performance. The diesel models, well, they don't really make much sense at all unless you do a crazy number of miles. Again, if you're trying to save cash, don't buy an Audi Q2, which is why entry-level Technic trim is a bit too sparse for us to recommend. We reckon sport trim is the pick of the range, but S-Line is also worth considering if you want bigger alloys and a sportier look. Avoid range-topping Vorsprung trim though, because yes, you get loads of standard equipment, but you'll be spending more than £40,000. That sort of money will get you a really nice Volvo XC40 or Range Rover Evoque. The only standard paint colours are black or white, so it is worth thinking about adding metallic paint. If you like this particular colour, it's called Arrow Grey Pearl and it costs £575. One option you'll definitely want to add is dual zone climate control, because as I said earlier, if you don't, you get rather naff looking controls here with no lovely digital display. Other options worth considering are illuminated interior inlays, privacy glass, wireless phone charging and the comfort and sound pack. That adds front parking sensors, a reversing camera, heated seats and a more powerful B&O sound system. So is the Q2 still a good buy? Well, for the sort of money it costs, you could have a Skoda Karoq, and that's a bigger car and objectively a very good one. But you're always going to pay more to have a premium badge. And because the Q2 is predicted to hold on to its value very well, it'll actually cost you less in the long run or on a PCP finance deal than you might imagine. We'd recommend avoiding the top trim levels, but certainly compared with its closest rivals like the Mini Countryman, the Q2 is a very good all-rounder indeed. But for lots more information on the Q2, head over to our website, whatcar.com, for our detailed 16-point review. You can shortcut straight to that by clicking the link up there at the top. And other than that, if you've enjoyed this video, please do leave us a comment, give it a like, and we'll see you next time.